What is up, Bleacher Report? Jesse here with Last Second Sports coming at you with another 49ers Daily. This time, a couple hours earlier than normal. There's something going on with the NBA. I heard there's a draft or something like that. Anyways, it bumped the show up a couple hours, but that's great because I do have some fun things to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about the possibility of Jalen Ramsey becoming a 49er. I think it is maybe a little bit more realistic than what I once thought. And then I want to read an article from one of our very own here at Bleacher Report. I think it was a well-written article, but I do disagree with some of the things that were written in the article about the 49ers in particular. So we'll go through that. And then I also want to break down Julian Edelman was on with Colin Cowherd and had some interesting things to say about the 49ers, and then parlay that into another conversation that I've been having as of late. So, that being said, let's talk about this article from Bleacher Report. Here, the premise of the article was essentially what type of pressure is on each team to win a Super Bowl. And the pressure meter for the 49ers was very, very high. It was a 9 out of 10. And I'm going to read what was written here, and then we'll talk about it. So it says, when is Kyle Shanahan going to lead the San Francisco 49ers to a Super Bowl victory? It's a fair question after the San Francisco 49ers lost in 2 title games to the Kansas City Chiefs on his watch. Though Shanahan deserves praise for his offensive play calling prowess, the 49ers have as many winning seasons as they do losing seasons through his 8 terms with the team. First of all, couldn't agree with this more. Kyle Shanahan, I think, is an awesome coach. I think I have him ranked 7th overall, but I've seen people's rankings over the last couple of days, and some people say he's 2nd behind Andy Reid. Too much praise. Listen, Kyle Shanahan is a great play caller, a great offensive mind, but I think a lot of the times he gets let off the hook for how the team does. Like, I'll give you an example in the Super Bowl. Oh, well, the offense left with the lead multiple times and then the defense couldn't close it out. Well, that's on the defensive coordinator. It's like, no, Kyle Shanahan's the head coach of this team. He's not the offensive coordinator of this team. And I think too often he is judged like he's the offensive coordinator, and that is just not the case. He's the head coach. So no matter what happens on this team, good or bad, he deserves more credit when things on the defense happen that go well. But when they don't go well, that's him. Same thing with special teams and what have you. So I do agree so far with what this article says. It says, in fairness, the 49ers dealt with quarterback turnover and Jimmy Garoppolo's injuries in a few of those down years. But this team's Super Bowl window could close within the next couple of years. This is where I start to disagree. The window is closed. The window of what this team was, the window is closed. I think it can open again, but it's opening essentially with a new cast of characters outside of a few. The team, as we once saw it, is no longer. There's so many players that were a part of that original window that just aren't here anymore. So I think the window is closed. I think that it can open very quickly. But right now, when I look at 2026, I don't look at this as a Super Bowl year for the 49ers. At 29, running back Christian McCaffrey is coming off of an injury-riddled season, and left tackle Trent Williams, who turns 37 in July, also missed several games last year. As 2 of the 49ers' top offensive players age with injuries, San Francisco's offense must undergo significant changes in the near future. I agree with this, but I think this slightly contradicts with the Super Bowl window being open, right? Quarterback Brock Purdy must prove that he can shoulder the offensive load. Shanahan has hinted that the team wants to preserve Christian McCaffrey. With a veteran-laden team and a couple of recent Super Bowl losses, Shanahan and the 49ers must find a breakthrough. In San Francisco has if San Francisco has another subpar year, its head coach may be labeled one of the league's most overrated in terms of how far he's led his team with top tier talent. Super Bowl pressure meter is at a 9. I agree with most of what this gentleman says in his article. Again, I think it was well written, and I went through all the teams, and it was all really well done. I just disagree with the overall pressure meter being a 9. Now, the premise that Kyle Shanahan, if they have a mediocre season, could be viewed as overrated, I do agree with that. But that doesn't mean that the pressure meter is at a 9 to win a Super Bowl. That just means that the pressure meter is at a 9 to get to the playoffs, because last year the 49ers were 6-11. That cannot happen again. This team cannot miss the playoffs. Kyle Shanahan, no matter what, when you look at it and you say, all right, we have a franchise quarterback who we paid a lot of money to. We have Kyle Shanahan, who is one of the higher paid coaches, one of the better offensive minds, and a lot of people rank him extremely high when it comes to coaches throughout the NFL. You add Robert Saleh to that equation, some of the veterans on this team, there is not a way that this team can miss the playoffs. That cannot happen. Otherwise, to the article's credit, Kyle Shanahan might be viewed as super overrated. You know, people are saying he's number 2 now. You can't continue to say that. I mean, right now, when you compare him to, say, a Sean McVay, 4 seasons where the 49ers haven't made the playoffs, well, if this is year number 9 and now all of a sudden you don't make the playoffs this year, that's 5 of your 9 seasons. You can't really say that you're an elite head coach or on the level of a Sean McVay who's only missed the playoffs twice through the same time span. So these are again, I think the article is well written. I agree with most of what the article says. The conclusion, I think, doesn't necessarily match that part of it. Now, I do also want to talk about Julian Edelman, who was on with Colin Cowherd. And I'm going to read you everything that he said, and then we're going to break it down and talk about it. So Julian Edelman, and talking about the 49ers, I'm going to set this up real quick. So Colin Cowherd over the last couple of days has been doing some bold takes with his co-host John Middlecoff, who has covered the 49ers for many, many years before he got big time. Shout out to John. But Colin Cowherd had his bold takes for the NFC. And one of his bold takes is that the 49ers were not going to make the playoffs. And one of John's bold takes was the 49ers were going to make the playoffs. So there was a bit of a disagreement there. So at that point, Julian Edelman comes onto the show. Colin Cowherd kind of talks about their disagreement there, and he uses Julian Edelman to be the tiebreaker. And this is what Julian Edelman said. He said, first off, there is no easy schedule in the NFL. I'm so sick and tired of hearing people say that. There is no Louisiana Lafayette Tech school. Everyone is getting paid the same amount of money. Shanahan is a great coach, but he's a coach that likes to play from ahead. Completely agree. So if we take a look at the 49ers, when they don't have a lead, the stats are terrible. When they play from ahead, they play the game they want to play. When their team is constructed to play that way, they are a really great football team. There's more, but I'm going to stop here. Could not agree more. And I've talked about the beauty of this season being such that if the 49ers, in my opinion, are going to win 10, 11, 12 games and make it to the playoffs, I believe that they're going to have to win a lot of tight games. The 49ers, talent-wise, top to bottom, is not what it's been in the past. They're back to the pack. I think the NFC had a couple of down years, when it came to the totality of it. But I think that the NFC is more talented this year than what it was last year or even the year before. So when you combine those things, that tells me the 49ers are going to be in a lot of close games. And if that is the case, this is a great opportunity for Kyle Shanahan to show that he can win those close games, for Brock Purdy to play in those situations and play better than what he did last year or even through this early stage in his career. So to me, this is a golden opportunity for the 49ers to learn how to win the way that they're going to need to know how to win, which means tight games as this team progresses and moves forward, because the NFL is full of highly contested games. I think the stat is Kyle Shanahan in his tenure with the 49ers, only 40% of the games that they've played in have been decided by one score. And when you look at the league averages since 2000, that number is 51%. So the 49ers are at 11% behind the league average. That's the average, not half the league that plays, 55, 60% of their games and tightly contested matches. So eventually that's going to even out. And if you say they have 18 or 17 games, 18 weeks, well, in those 17 games, 8 or 9 of those are probably going to be tight. And if they go 3-6 in those games, they're not going to be a playoff team. But if they can go 6-3, they will be. So I think this is a good opportunity for the 49ers to learn how to play in these tight games. Julian Edelman continues. The offensive line is getting old. This reminds me a lot of the 2019 Patriots, the old factor. If you're going to sit there and you're going to say, if this guy stays healthy, we're going to be good, you're going, excuse me. If you're going to say, if this guy stays healthy, we're going to be good, then you're gone. I remember hearing that all the time from coaches in the Patriots organization. If you think we're going to be good if this guy stays healthy, that means your team doesn't have the depth to go out and win. So I don't like those sayings. When it comes down to the 49ers, they lost Ward, they lost key parts of their secondary, which they've struggled the last few years. All right, I'm going to stop here again and kind of recap what he's saying. He's basically saying the guys that you rely on most were injured just last year. And to sit here and say, well, if Christian McCaffrey's healthy or Trent Williams is healthy, it's going to be hard to rely on that because that's not likely going to happen. Players as they age don't get healthier, and players that are coming off of injury, usually there's a chance there that they might not make it through the season. If I were to set the over under at 4.5 games missed for Kittle, Trent, and Christian McCaffrey, total 4.5 games missed, would you take the over or would you take the under? I would comfortably take the over. Now, maybe some of those games overlap, but let's say they don't. Let's say between the three of them, they miss 5 games. Those are going to be tough games to win. I mean, not having those guys is going to be extremely tough. We already talked about how this season could be full of highly contested matchups. Well, all of a sudden you remove a Trent Williams or a CMC or a George Kittle from the equation for a game. That might be a loss. That might be the difference. So the health thing does matter for sure. I understand exactly what he's saying. He goes on to say, so I'm worried about my San Francisco 49ers. I grew up loving this team. I root for this team, but we don't have any offensive linemen, and Trent is old. Trent missed a few games last year. It gets tough when you get banged up, and he's a big man. They play the Rams twice, and that's a young Rams team. That defense is all that. All right, this brings me to a bit of a dispute that has been going on my social media, mainly my YouTube channel, Last Second Sports. You can check it out there. But I recently did a rankings with the 49ers, power rankings going into week 1, and I had the 49ers at number 13. I've said that I do believe that the 49ers are going to be a playoff team. I think I have them at 11 wins, but they are not going to win the division. And to me, the Rams are the clear better team. Now, a lot of people take exception with this, but to me, I don't understand what the debate is. I don't understand how people can look at the 49ers right now and the Rams right now and say that the 49ers are a better team or that the Rams aren't clearly the better team. There's a lot that goes into this. The Rams, to me, the most important things in football is your head coach, your quarterback, your offensive line, and your defensive line. And I can make a strong argument that the 49ers, or excuse me, the Rams are superior in all 4 categories. I think they are superior. Now, some people again think that Shanahan is better than McVay. Okay. Some people think that Matthew Stafford is overrated, which again, I don't understand, but all right. But the argument at the very least can be made that the Rams are better in all those categories. And I think that they are better in all those categories. So for me, I'm going to give the nod to that team. But I think you also have to look at what happened the previous year. And especially what happened down the tail end of the previous year. When you look at teams who kind of seemingly come out of nowhere from one year to the next, a lot of times there were signs the previous season if you looked at it. Now, a lot of people will look at it and be like, "Oh, that team won 4 games. How are they good this year?" Well, if you paid attention, 3 of those 4 wins came down the stretch of the season, and those games that they lost were tight games. It's not a surprise that this team is much better this year, that this team somehow is fighting for a playoff spot. And that's how I look at the Rams. But the Rams had their cake and they ate it too. They did make the playoffs last year. They did win the division last year, but they also were hot down the stretch of last year. You look at how they fared down the stretch. The Rams won 6 straight essentially before losing to the Eagles. The only game that they lost, and I'm not going to count it, is week 18, and that's because they rested their starters. But the final 4 games of this regular season that mattered, they won. Then they got into the playoffs and they mopped the Vikings. Then they played the Eagles, and the Eagles ran through the playoffs. Like, make no mistakes about it. The Eagles ran through the playoffs, except for when they played the Rams. The Rams went to Philadelphia. It was a bad weather game, and the Rams had ball in hand in scoring position. If they throw a touchdown or score a touchdown there, they win. They win the game. And who knows what happens from there? The Rams were hot at that point. They had a lot of young players that they really relied on throughout the course of last season. And as the season went along, those young players started to develop, which is why I'm encouraged by the 49ers, by the way. Early on, I think it could be rough for the 49ers, but I think these young players could develop. And when they do in the second half of the season, they could really make some noise here. That's exactly what happened with the Rams. And so now you've got a full year under your belt for some of these guys. They're probably going to be pretty dang good. So you add that in with the fact that I think they actually got better year to year. They traded out Cooper Kupp for Devontae Adams. They added Puna Ford. This team on paper is even better than what it ended last season with. And that team last season ended the year with putting the Eagles on their heels like nobody else did. So I'm not picking the Rams to win the Super Bowl, but to act as if the Rams aren't good or the burden of proof isn't on you who believes that the 49ers are better. I think that's arrogance. That's crazy. That's blind fandom. I hate the Rams. I want the 49ers to win the division. I would love nothing more than that. But at this point, if I'm being honest, I cannot, in good conscience and good faith, sit up here and pretend to keep it real and then say, yeah, the 49ers are better than the Rams. That's just, it's not true. It's not. Now, luckily, the season isn't played on paper, and the 49ers are going to have two opportunities to go out there and prove me wrong, prove the Rams wrong. But in this moment right now, how can I pick a 6-11 team that didn't get hot down the stretch, that has a lot of turnover, has a lot of question marks, is relying on a lot of young players, relying on older players to stay healthy that haven't been that, and some to even turn back the clocks a little bit in Christian McCaffrey. It's just there's a lot of what ifs. And for me, the best way to analyze what's going to happen, it's not about being right. I can't predict the future. But if I play this out 100 times, the most likely scenario is some of those things that I'm worried about for the 49ers do go wrong. And it's enough for the Rams to go ahead and catapult and be the number one team in the division. So that's the way that I see it. I think it's pretty clear. A lot of people are very frustrated with that take. But again, I would say that the burden of proof is on you and not me to prove the other way around, that the 49ers are the better team. And saying that, oh, Shanahan owns McVay, that's great. But that was then. This is now. All I know is that the Rams beat the 49ers twice last year. And all I know is that the Rams made the playoffs and were hot and got better, decisively better on paper. Did the 49ers get decisively better? Were the 49ers hot down the stretch? Did the 49ers have a winning record? Did the 49ers make the playoffs? So to me, it's pretty clear. All right, I do want to end on the Jalen Ramsey thing. This could make the difference. It really could. Jalen Ramsey wants to play for a West Coast team. Now, the latest is Tyreek Hill is going to try to talk to Jalen Ramsey and get him to stay in Miami. I would say it's not likely that it happens, but you never know. Tyreek Hill's well respected. They're friends. Maybe he can talk him into staying. I don't know. I would put that at maybe like a 20% chance, but I would say there's an 80% chance that Ramsey's going to get moved. He prefers the West Coast. So essentially he's saying, I want to play for the Rams. I want to play for the 49ers, and I want to play for the Chargers. I don't think that the Chargers will be in this process at all. I don't think the Chargers want Jalen Ramsey. And it's not a Jim Harbaugh type of move. So for me, I think this comes down to the Rams and the 49ers. Now, I do think that the Rams have a much more plausible chance to go get Jalen Ramsey. First of all, we know that they are interested. That much is clear. We know they've actually talked with the Dolphins as well. And we know that Jalen Ramsey played for that team, won a Super Bowl with that team, familiar with that team, and there is mutual love. So the chances of him going to the Rams, I think, are certainly the highest. Okay. But that doesn't rule out the 49ers. I think if the 49ers made a strong push here, they absolutely could make it happen. And I don't think that Jalen Ramsey would turn it down. I look at this secondary, and that's where some of my biggest question marks come in. Now, I would prefer if Jalen Ramsey were to play safety for sure. Jalen Ramsey, if he's willing to move to safety, which is interesting. A lot of cornerbacks back in the day used to make that transition. For some reason, it's not as common for corners to age and then turn into safeties. But I think Jalen Ramsey's one of those guys where he certainly could. And I think he's one of those guys that would be willing to do so. And I think he would be good at it. I mean, let's not forget he played the star role with the Rams, which is an in the box role where you are required to blitz, you're required to tackle a lot more, get your nose dirty when it comes to chasing down the football and being around some of those bigger players in the trenches, and he was unafraid of that. So I think he would make a fine safety, especially as he gets older. So I look at that and say, all right, Jalen Ramsey may not be a 1-year rental. I think he would initially come in, maybe play corner, but if you can get him to play corner for a year and then convert to safety and be a safety for the next 2 or 3 years for you, I think that could be a big help. And when I look at the safety room for the 49ers, that is by far the biggest question mark that I have on this team. And then I would say second biggest question mark is who the heck is going to be that third corner? Because teams go nickel more often than going base defense. So Jalen Ramsey will play a lot of snaps one way or another, whether he was a safety, whether he's a corner. He's gonna get on the field. Like the usage is there for Jalen Ramsey. I think it's not going to take much for Jalen Ramsey, maybe a pick swap, maybe like a fifth or a sixth. I would be interested in it. Now, I would say again that it is most likely that he goes to the Rams, but if we've decided there's an 80% chance he's going to get moved. I'd say maybe there's a 5% chance he goes to the Chargers if he wants to go to a West Coast team. I just don't think it's likely at all, which means there's a 95% chance he goes to the Rams or the 49ers. And I'm going to put that Rams chance probably at like 75 of that. But 20%, I mean, that's a big number. I do think it's more possible than what we think. And as time is worn on, I'm actually more and more open to it. I would say if you asked me this question, 2 weeks ago when it first came up, I was like, lukewarm at best. Probably no. Save the salary cap. Roll it over to next year. But the more I think about it and I think about him moving to safety, I just initially looking at it as a 1-year rental to play corner, it's like, is it worth it to maybe stunt the growth of some of the younger guys? And then you're taking on the money and 49, he's not going to be the reason you win a Super Bowl necessarily, most likely. It doesn't seem worth it. But then you start to think about, gosh, if he is willing to play safety, this could be a 3-year type of situation. I look at Charles Woodson with Green Bay when he left the Raiders. He transitioned to safety and did it so well and was able to win a Super Bowl with the Packers. And I could just see. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Everything went black on me. I think I'm good. But I could just see Jalen Ramsey doing that and being that for the 49ers. So I'm open to it. Again, I think the most likely scenario is he goes to the Rams, which again kind of defends my previous point of them being the better team. But if he became a 49er, I think that would certainly help. And it would help close the gap a little bit this year as well. So that being said, another 49ers Daily here on Bleacher Report. I'm Jesse with Last Second Sports. I'll be back tomorrow with another 49ers Daily. And until then, much love. Stay blessed. Peace.